several podcasts, The Moth, Hidden Brain, Morbid, TED Radio Hour. I like to listen to them when I exercise and fold the clothes, like boring things, because podcasts allow me to multitask easier. Some are inspirational, some conversational, some educational.
It wants you to choose a language.
What? Okay. Great, those are some really good podcasts, absolutely. So, okay, so I'm hearing that there is something about kind of turning your brain off, doing something physical, while keeping your brain also active on something completely different. Okay, excellent. What about some people around the room? Okay, I saw you first.
Some of my favorites are like the ones that begin and end, like miniseries, like Dolly Parton's America, S-Town, The Shrimp Next Door, because I know that there's gonna be like an ending.
Okay.
And then the current one I'm listening to is Normal Gossip, and I don't know why I like that. I think it's just a distraction.
Oh, okay, so I actually I've heard of some of the ones you mentioned, but I haven't watched them. So would you say that they're narrative?
Yes, like S-Town and Dolly Parton's America, and I can't remember the other one I mentioned. Yeah, they take you through a story from beginning to end, sort of like the life and times of Dolly Parton. And S-Town is this one story about this mystery in this town in Alabama. And then Normal Gossip is also narrative. It's every week, every episode is like a friend of a friend shares like a gossip story, and you go through it, and the host stops every once in a while and says, okay, what would you do next? Would you like dig? Would you ask? Would you talk to a friend? And then you get to go through the story of what actually happened.
Thank you for sharing. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a little trashy.
It's trashy fun, exactly.
So there's two favorite ones. One of them is Planet Geo, and it covers geosciences. So they tell us, they explain to us like the news of geosciences today, like the careers that are opening up, or sometimes they just talk about rocks. And I love rocks. So I mean, the other day I was listening about pudding stone and where it came from and where you can find it and where it's actually a state rock somewhere. And the other one's the planetary radio. So it covers the news from the Planetary Society and how they're using money, like specific funding for specific missions to space, or what they're trying to get funding for, or anything history related to space.
Thank you for sharing. I think I saw someone else. Let me try you first.
Someone mentioned The Moth, and I really like that because it's real stories told by real people about their real life.
Oh, yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, they have that constraint where you can't read. 7 minutes and you can't read off a script, so you have to memorize your own story. Yeah, I went to a few events of The Moth. It's really great. Excellent.
Mine is kind of silly. Well, the first one's not silly. It's a true crime podcast called Hide and Seek. It's personal to me because it's about the death of one of my students. They're keeping it alive by, it's an unsolved murder case. So it's a podcast about her murder and trying to keep it in the public. So that's not funny, but you know what I mean. And the other one is a brain death podcast, I think, because it's Dr. Phil's. I like Dr. Phil. He's absolutely amazing in my mind. And the silliness of life that's on his show or was on his show, because he's not on live anymore. He keeps it on with his podcast, and he's got some interesting characters on there.
Oh, that's fun. I think I saw other people. Anyone else want to share? One more? Yes, thank you.
So I think as difficult as things are right now, I really appreciate people who are able to bring some humor to that conversation. So like Jon Stewart's weekly show, I really appreciate that. And sometimes I kind of go off and watch things that really aren't podcasts as podcasts on the way to work because there's just some heavy stuff right now, especially with the work that we do, and being able to communicate that with a little bit of humor is helpful.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, so there's one more chat comment here which says there are some moth videos on YT channel.
Sorry, on what?
YouTube.
Oh, why, YouTube. Rebecca, get with the lingo. Get with the times. Thank you guys for sharing, excellent, yeah, so we're hearing a couple of different things, but some of the similarities is narrative stories, something that keeps us kind of in touch with the world around us. But have a bigger scale, I think that's a very human thing, we like to feel a part of something bigger than ourselves, right? That's us, so we went through this whole thing without introducing ourselves, as you do in conversations. So Jamie, do you wanna go first?
Hi, I'm Jamie Trujillo. I am the Executive Director of the New Mexico Adult Education Association. And part of what we do with NMEA is professional development. It's a huge part of what we do. And one of our professional development projects is the podcast, which is called Connect with Adult Ed. So if you haven't heard of it, I believe we do have a QR code at the end or something like that that can lead you to our podcast. But this was actually a brainchild of Nadia's, and I will let them talk about that a little bit. But I slowly just got more involved and became the producer eventually, and then the co-host. So for the podcast, those are my roles.
Yeah, my role is to be the brain, you said, is that what you said?
That was your brainchild.
My brain parent, that's my role, I forgot to put that on the slide. So I'm Nadia Kader, I am the creator, developer, and the host, so kind of, those are all fancy terms for saying that I had this really weird idea of doing a podcast about our industry, adult education, and have people talk about their jobs and their lives and what cool things they're doing in their programs, because as people online and in person probably know, is that sometimes it's so hard to get all together. And we only get together in events like this, so like COAB or regional conferences, state conferences, fun meetings, but what about the in-between? What about longer forms? So that's kind of what we're gonna get into. So Jamie does like our editing, she taught herself.
Whoa.
I kind of, yeah, we're gonna talk about that in a little bit, but so we kind of work together on just, and also I do kind of the project managing side of it. Which again, we'll get into. So,
How do you want me to interrupt you for online questions?
that one's fine, like that.
Okay.
Hey, I got it. Okay.
All right, so I have two more online comments.
Oh, please.
Okay, so I think we have a bit of lag time, but one other person said their favorite podcast is Tell Me What Happened, which relates how a person was saved by another person from a dangerous happening. And then another person online said, oh, love this. We recently had a discussion on doing a podcast. Hi from Kentucky.
Oh, nice. Hello, Kentucky.
Hello, Kentucky. Thank you for joining us. Thank you guys in person and online for joining us. Yeah, so we're just gonna get into the more boring parts of it, explaining to you guys what we do. So we had our little connection activity. It's asking you guys to talk about your podcast, so we can check that off. We're gonna get into how we formed it, our successes with it, how we find guests, what little we do for marketing, what tools we use, so the technical tools, what skills we learned, and what our goals and next steps are. And then whatever the conclusion is. Yeah, so I started talking about this a little bit. So I had this idea and this desire for an industry podcast, and I don't think that's actually a real term, but I have a background in instructional design, and instructional design has a lot of podcasts. They have a lot of podcasts that talk about their work, what tools they use, what methodologies, interviewing each other, talking about processes. And I listened to a lot of it, I listened to in a period of time, I listened to a lot of instructional design podcasts because I was teaching myself instructional design. And I realized instructional design is education for adults. Why are we not doing that on our end where we are educators who educate adults?
And I've also noted, because I am a pattern maker, is that cultivating conversations is a really fascinating way to learn. And it's a very different way to learn. And it's also fun. When you're into the conversation, you learn from each other and you grow. So that's one person who is listening and reflecting, and the other person telling their story, telling their thoughts. What you're doing when you're speaking is you're actually collecting it together. So you're actually kind of reinforcing things in your head. I don't know if anyone's ever had that experience of like when you're talking to someone and in the middle of your conversation, something clicks that you didn't realize. Has anyone had that? Yeah, that happens. It's how our weird brains work. And also I would like as Jamie mentioned earlier, I wanted a platform for sharing best practices. And I feel like that's something that's really key here. And our students are absolutely amazing. And I never want to say anything bad about them, and I don't. But I also noted, again, pattern making, is that we focus so much on our students' stories, we don't focus on our own stories. And I feel like that is a missing piece. We are part of the process. We work with our students grow, and we grow. Why aren't we talking about that side? So that's kind of like, that's where that came from. I came to Jamie, I'm like, hey, why don't we do this? And Jamie and I worked together for many years, and kind of a common pattern that we got in a comfortable groove was like, that sounds great, you figure it out.
Yeah. So really quickly, I wanted to talk about what we've already experienced with our podcast. We are on season 2, and every season is a fiscal year, so that'll give you an idea of how long we've been doing this. And so we're almost done with season 2 at this point. And we have seen a whole lot of evolution with the podcast and where it's gone from at the beginning to now. We have definitely done a deep dive into many different adult education topics and highlighting different innovations, sometimes going into kind of sensitive topics. And we've done, of course, subject-based topics like math best practices. In April, we have one that's releasing about science and just, I think, what was it? Science literacy is what she called it, and how she integrates that into her instruction. We also had quite a long segment on serving neurodivergent students, and that started with interviewing 2 neurodivergent instructors or practitioners. And so it got started with that, and I don't know, Nadia, if you wanted to say something about that, because that was a really great series that we had going on.
Yeah, so I guess technically it wasn't students, but it started with neurodivergent practitioners talking about it themselves, and I was one of them. So it was the 3 of us talking at each other, diatribing for a very long episode. It was fun though, we had a blast. And then we followed that up with, we went from like, here's our personal experiences and this is how it affects us. And then our next episodes, we actually interviewed people at the state level to talk about what are accommodations that we could do in our state. So of course, I know a lot of you guys are from different states, but we got a really good idea of things that we weren't sure about and like more practical in the sense of, well, this is what you can do for your students when they say these things. This is what you can't do. This is how you ask for test accommodations, because just having that conversation with our HSC administrator, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't sure of the title.
She was, gosh, not the HSC administrator, because that's Katya.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about Katya.
Okay.
Yeah, I was talking about Katya. Katya was explaining to us, so she's our head state president. You data people probably know her, she's a superstar. And she went into these really technical details of how you're supposed to ask for accommodation for the HSC and the GED, because they're both different. HiSET and GED, they're both different.
Yep.
And it was way more complicated than I thought it would be. And it was one of those things where I'm sure everyone has these administrative processes of if you don't ask, there's really no way to tell how to do this. It's really frustrating. We have a question.
I don't need that.
We need it for the people online.
Did you begin with an agenda of what your podcast calendar was going to be? And then how did it evolve as you went on?
That's a great question. So what we did was we had a bunch of ideas. What are topics we want to cover? What do we think people want to talk about? I also went around at one of our state conferences and asked a few people about what would they be interested in, or what would they want to know about. That was a harder question because the focus was so much on students. And again, like, students are absolutely wonderful and they need to shine, they deserve it. But again, it's like, what are we doing as practitioners? How can we learn from each other from our own skills and knowledge? Not just what our students triumphed through. So it was a mixed bag, but basically we bounce ideas off each other a lot. So we kind of get ideas. Jamie and I also talk about people in the field, like, we know because we have our network. So we like, hey, we know this person in the south of the state who's doing this interesting thing. Why don't we email them? Check it out. Your network is key. Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry.
I will also add, Nadia is absolutely right. We do have a whole lot of focus on practitioners. We have had a couple of episodes about students, especially our student ambassadors. So we do have a mix there. We also have done a lot of highlighting of our professional developers and our professional learning projects. So our New Mexico Distance Education Learning Technologies team, we interviewed the whole team so that they could talk about what they do with their professional learning on distance learning technologies, as well as our TSTM team. So we were able to talk to them about the training itself, trying to help get folks interested in that training so that they could ask questions or join the cohort. So we've done a lot of that, as well as being a little bit more personal, so sharing stories. One of our most recent episodes was an episode where Nadia and I talked about our personal career journeys. And as far as I understand, that is probably the most listened to episode at this point. So we did get very real, very personal with that one, as well as a lot of listener emails. So we've done this a few times where we ask people to share self-care tips. How do you take care of yourself, especially right before the holidays? That tends to be like our December episode. Or how do you celebrate breaks? And so I'm really happy that the field has generally been very responsive. When we ask for listener emails, they're fun, and we get to talk about it, we get to share it online.
So it might be a little early to ask this, but have you ever received information via that feedback request, or just maybe a topic became kind of challenging or bumped up against maybe like what your state would want you to say, or what your institution would want you to say, or something like that?
That's a very good question. I don't think that we've ever had, so to answer both of those parts, a listener email response where maybe we decided to not share it, or maybe we had to censor it. We have had people specifically request to be anonymous.
Okay.
And so we tend to just make everything anonymous. We don't share names. But as far as, like, say, the state or institution bumping up against things, when Nadia was talking about the serving neurodivergent students and the accommodations, what we actually did was originally we had done this episode with the neurodivergent practitioners. Then we wanted to go into another follow-up episode from talking to an instructor who worked a lot with neurodivergent students and how to serve them. And they said, hold on, wait a minute. We have a guidance document that's coming out in a few months. Let's wait on this episode and let's make it a 3-part episode. So we still did that, where we had an episode on serving neurodivergent students from the point of view of a teacher and from the point of view of the state office, policy-wise. And we coincided that with the release of the guidance document. And then we had the episode on test accommodations. So it kind of evolved based on that feedback. We tried very hard to keep the state office informed of anything that might be a hot button or that we need their advice on. You know, sometimes we had said, hey, let's share or highlight a literacy program. And so we went to the state office and said, do you have any literacy programs you think we should highlight? And so we got their suggestions. So not necessarily pushback, just really good feedback, I would say.
Yeah, I would like to add, we also have a very receptive higher ed office, so I know everyone's different, but our state director is very in favor of this project and appreciates the kind of work that we do, so that makes it a lot easier.
All right.
Okay, so we have individual reflection. So we have a Padlet here so that online people and in-person people can share in the same place. So we have in our, it's on the Whova app, we have printed out copies for the people in person. Online people, please go to the Whova app. And there should be this brainstorm document. So kind of our goal here today is not just to tell you about what we did, but also to kind of give you a little bit of space if you would be interested in figuring out your own podcast or podcast project. We're trying to make this interactive this time. We've done this presentation one time before, and this is my fault. So if you hate it, make sure you tell me in person.
And let me start the timer. We'll give you 5 minutes for
Yes.
this. And we are going to put the link in the chat if you want to say that.
Yeah, so we got whatever's going on here. That's a 5-minute timer. And please give yourselves some time, give yourself some space, and think about some of these things because podcasting is fun. It's work fun. I don't know if you guys have that, but I do.
Oh, yeah.
So is this part of your workday?
Yes.
Part of your workday.
I put it, so the question was, is it part of my work day? I will say it's more about like my work month, like I'll put a couple of hours and I got permission to do that. So a couple of hours of month where we meet, we design, we plan, we interview.
Are we going to see it there? We can have it. We will eventually put it up.
We will eventually put the Padlet on our shared screen, yes.
For those of you in person, you can also write it down on that brainstorming sheet. The Padlet will allow you to see everybody else's answers and then respond.
Is there?
I'm just trying to get the link into the chat.
Yeah, so we wanted to give you guys some time, so like just please answer our questions 1 and 2. I see there's some eager beavers, that's great, but I don't want you to be bored later. So take your time. Be a little bored now. So you won't be very bored later.
All right, go ahead and finish up. And then we will continue. I know somebody had put in the chat, kind of as some instructions, make sure to only answer questions 1 and 2. There are 7 total, but we'll get to all of those before the end of the session.
Should we just turn it off? Or- Oh. There we go.
All right, let's go ahead and move on in the interest of time. Really quickly, I just wanted to talk about how we go about finding our guests. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but we tend to do the way that we look for guests tends to have 2 different areas. First, based on the topic. Okay, what relevance does this person have to the topic? Like Nadia said, we have a network, and so we try to build on that. We might ask the state office for suggestions, and of course, timeliness. So like I mentioned, we tend to do listener emails during the holidays. We also have special advocacy episodes during our Adult Education and Literacy Day time, during AEFL week, for those of you that know about that in September. So it just depends on the time of year for some of them. And we do absolutely try to look at expertise and referral. So it's not that we have a very detailed method for finding guests, and sometimes guests tend to come up on accident, like with that neurodivergence series that we talked about. One thing that we're doing that's a little bit different now is we have a feedback form on our podcast page of our website. So if anybody has an idea for a podcast episode, they can put that on there. And if they want to be interviewed, we are happy to do that. So somebody can suggest an episode to us, and then we will put them on the podcast as a guest. As far as marketing, we've gotten a lot better about this. When we first started the podcast, it was all on YouTube. That's all we did. We uploaded it to YouTube. We told people to follow us on our YouTube channel. We put the little links to the YouTube videos on our podcast page on our website. And then we would send an email every time we release an episode. We would send an email to all of our listservs. There are several listservs that we have in the state for directors, teachers, data technicians, and our student ambassadors and our state association members. So we would just send it to all of the listservs and refer them to the YouTube channel. Since then, we have expanded. So we do have somebody doing our social media now. So we do post those every time there's a release, they get posted on Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. So we have that connection. And we found a platform called Podbean. And if you've never heard of Podbean, it's really handy. It's not very expensive for the subscription. I can't think of it offhand, but for like a basic subscription where you're not trying to monetize it, it's really not that bad. And what they do is they then will host your podcast on iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Audible. And you do have to go through some steps to get approved for all of those different platforms. But once you do that, every time we release an episode on YouTube, it goes automatically to all of those other platforms. And it's been so cool to like pull up my Apple Podcast app and see our podcast on there. It's really great.
What's this called?
Podbean. So it's just like it sounds, Podbean, Podbean. And the other thing that they have, which has saved me a whole lot of time, is they have an AI feature. And so I can put in the raw recording and it will automatically take out all of those long pauses and ums and uhs. And that saves me seriously hours of editing time. So it's very much worth it. Yes, on Podbean. So, because of that, like I said, now we have our podcast and all these different platforms. Last year at COVID, we actually brought some flyers for our podcast and we put them out on one of the tables where anybody could put flyers, and that was really cool. We do tend to have flyers at our state conferences, and we talk about the podcast a lot, at least I do. So anybody will listen, I'll talk to you about it. So word of mouth also helps. So as far as our marketing goes, these are the main ways that we get the podcast out.
Which one do you think works the best? The podcast platform? Repeat the question.
So she asked, which one do you think works the best? Which platform?
They all work in conjunction. There's not one best. I would say that if off the top of my head though, is that word of mouth keeps coming back, but that is way slower than everything else. But it's also like kind of the culture and the nature of New Mexico and our field. Like we're very community oriented.
Love talking to each other.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you about Podbean that I really appreciate is the analytics as well. So they will tell you who's downloading it. You can't really get a lot of YouTube analytics, but most of our listeners listen on Spotify. That's what we found out. On top of it, we know where it's being listened to, what time of day and what day of the week is the most common, which we have some in Germany and South America.
We'll never know, but the thing that's confusing about Spotify is that the analytics shows you what was downloaded. It doesn't tell you what was streamed, and a lot of people stream and don't download. There's a setting on Spotify where if you like subscribe to a show or something, it would just automatically download the new episode, but that doesn't mean you listen to it.
Right.
So there's a lot of hit or miss with this kind of stuff. That's why you have to use a mix of things together.
Yeah.
And of course for some reason, we did not bring flyers to this conference, which is go figure, apparently the most attended co-ed ever. So really lucky. And also to a much lesser extent, I share all updated episodes. I put them on my LinkedIn. I try to be a little more, I don't know, what do you call it? Active there. But yeah, and we're working, all these things are working together. Yeah, so we have this 10 minutes.
It might not take the full 10 because we're.
Yeah, we're kind of running. Okay, you wanna say 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it says 10, that's confusing, but our technical difficulties kind of put us off a little bit, it happens, but so our Padlet was split into multiple questions, so like 3 and 4. Take your time to just work on that. Yes, and of course, you can always access the Padlet with the QR code. And the links should be for you online people, the links should still be in the chat. Please let us know if you're having any difficulties, and Rebecca will let us know. Can we pass you that? Oh.
I was just showing you.
Oh. I was like,
And also, please feel free to talk to each other if you're in the room. Like, please feel free to talk to each other about different ideas. Because I think the questions 3 and 4 have to do with marketing and interviewing.
So you have a fiscal year as a season?
It's July 1st to June 30th. So the question was, the fiscal year is a season? That was the question. Yeah, the fiscal year is July 1st, to June 30th.
And how often do you release episodes?
the second question was how often do we release episodes? We were gonna get to that a little later.
Okay.
But just edification, we used to do 2 a month, we reduced it to once a month. So the reason why we did the fiscal year was because that's usually when we're wrapping up a work and we take breaks. So that was my biggest contribution to this is making us stop working. Otherwise, we just keep going until we'll burn out, and then this project wouldn't exist and we wouldn't be here today.
And on top of that, we do have breaks throughout the year. So in January, we don't release an episode, and in July, we don't release an episode. Did you have a question? Oh, here, I'll give you the microphone.
How long are each of your episodes?
Also another great question. They tend to be anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on the topic. We used to split them up. We used to do part 1, part 2, and we found that so many people just didn't listen to part 2. So we just stopped doing that.
That's only a few hours a month of your work.
Yes, because how we do it is we will record with someone for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half if they need some more work. And then Jamie works with this AI tool, and it's also with technology, these kind of tools, the more you work at it, the faster you get at it. So originally it would take, Jamie, actually, why don't you talk about that?
I'm gonna reserve that while people are still working on questions 3 and 4, because we are gonna talk about the different tools that we use, and I'll get into like my time frame for that in more detail.
I can't see 1 and 2 anymore. This is 3. And I don't see.
Okay, why don't you finish and then I'll help you.
I just wondering if that's, say this is, there are a whole bunch of things in there. Oh, I hope you get lost.
Well, I hope.
The tablets still,
They're fine.
still fine.
Okay,
That's bizarre.
yeah, it is.
We have about 1 more minute.
There's some interesting ones. I haven't seen timers like this before.
Yeah, that's a full time.
Cash.
We
are.
You too?
Huh?
Okay.
Like that one with the last one.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of mentors going into the products at the end. And it's
Oh,
this
okay.
one, it's
Fun,
unreadable. It'll just land and then there's some other ones. Oh gosh. Oh. Like a bomb and the time that is the fuse.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward here, but please feel free to keep posting in the Padlet as we talk. That's no problem.
Okay, so we came back. Okay.
Refreshed my screen, it came back.
Okay, we were just having some minor technical difficulties, but we're good. We're gonna move into tech tools and how we use them. So again, this was kind of something that came over time of really realizing what we're using. So our tool, one of our primary tools is Google Workspace. We have the teaching and learning upgrade with Google Workspace. So we use Google Meet, we record, that's where we record all our episodes. We also download them. We don't have video podcasts just yet, so even though we record it as a like a Google Meet, we just rip the audio from there. We also use Google Docs to kind of plan out and also to asynchronously, Jamie and I will write, questions about what we want to ask people or where we want to go with it. And of course, we use Gmail. So Gmail is a big one because that's how we communicate with our field, with each other through Gmail, GChat. We also have listservs, email listservs that go to the entire, all employees in adult education in New Mexico. And that's one of our marketing too, is that we update that. We also have some external cameras and mics. So I don't know if anyone knows this, but fun fact, when you buy a computer and the built-in camera and mic are actually a very, very low quality. And that's the reason for that. It's bottom of the barrel. So it will get your job done, But it doesn't sound good, it doesn't look good. It's one thing to have a meeting, but when you record it and you listen to it later, it's very distracting. Listen or watch or listen later, it's very distracting, so if you stepping up your game, you can buy an external camera that has a decent mic in it. Or you can have an external mic and external camera. Those range anywhere between 20 to like over $200. I'm not telling anyone to buy a $200 mic. Jamie has a decent one. She's $30, sounds good. I actually have a little bit of a higher end one that I like it because it looks like a big podcaster mic, but it's a little more expensive, but I bought that on my own dime, so. Yeah, we use Podbean, like Jamie was mentioning earlier, that's our podcast hosting, so that's where they host it. As well as sending it out to all of the, what do you call it, Jamie?
The platforms.
The platforms, right, yeah, Spotify, Amazon Music, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the AI editing that is included in that. Podcastle.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that as I'm talking about this part, that you understand the timing for the editing, because that's where most of the time is spent on these podcast episodes. So when an episode is recorded in Google Meet, the recording goes into Google Drive, and I will download it. I will put it into Podcastle AI. Podcastle AI is a very simple editing software that's online. You can get the free version, or you can get the premium subscription, which is even cheaper than Podbean. And it has more editing tools like noise reduction or audio leveling. So in case you have somebody with a really great microphone and you have somebody with a really bad microphone, it'll kind of help, level the audio there. The reason I first put it in to Podcastle AI is because that's how I rip out just the audio from the video. I upload the video, it transforms everything into audio. It seems like it's an extra step, but it's the easiest way that it's worked for me. At that point, I download it and upload it into Podbean, where then the AI will clean it up a little bit. That takes, all in all, several minutes. And I'm doing other things. While it's uploading, downloading. It will give me the AI edited audio, which then I put back in the Podcastle. Because at that point, I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to listen to the entire episode because AI software does not have the capability of hearing, oh yeah, don't worry, Jamie will edit that out. Don't worry, it's okay. Jamie will take that out. Or we have to move a whole segment, a whole question over to another spot in there. So that's what I'll do. I'll do that. I'll take out some other little ums and uhs that weren't caught. And it takes me about, for an hour and a half episode, all in all, it'll take me about 5 hours to edit that. And I tend to try to do 10 to 12 minutes at a time, just because it'll take me about an hour or so. Yes.
Okay, so there's a question from the chat. It says if my speakers in the podcast are remote, can they access Podbean and record on their own? Or do they need to send me an MP3 and I upload?
Very good question. If you're paying for Podbean, you do have to have them send you the MP3 because you have that account and then you have to put it into Podbean. So keep that in mind if you're wanting to kind of splice audio together or have people send you audio. We're actually getting started with doing stuff like that where we're asking people to send their own audio. And so they send it to us, then we combine it on our own.
So you upload it into Podbean?
So the question was, so we upload the raw audio into Podbean for the AI, then into podcast.
Right, that I understood, but if you have somebody send.
I just want to make sure I understand. If you have somebody who sends you something that they've done, an audio tape, then when you get it, you have to upload it into Podbean, do the editing, download it, upload it into Podcastle, and then you can do more editing.
And I will preface that by saying, I have a feeling that I'm not doing it the most efficient way. But this is what's worked for me very much. From there, once I have everything edited, all the audio, I'm going to put it into Canva. And I'm not sure if you all have ever played with Canva, But if you are a nonprofit or an educational institution, you can get Canva Pro for free, and it's amazing. So what we do is we already have our logo, which you've seen a little bit, is that purple logo that we have. That is our background. So our YouTube videos have that in the background. Sometimes we change it up a little bit and we put questions in there and things like that. But that is what is the backdrop of our videos. For every other platform, it's just audio, so it doesn't matter. So we create a video in Canva with that. It has our intro music. We put in our audio, has our outro music, and that's what we put into YouTube, okay? So once we have downloaded that from Canva, and I will always make sure to send that Canva link to Nadia, have them listen to it, make sure everything sounds good, make sure there's nothing wonky in there, maybe, you know, something got cut or something like that, or maybe there's a little bit that just sounds funky. So I will fix that. And then we download it and put it into YouTube, and from that point it gets shared everywhere. So that is the whole process of creating one of our episodes.
How did you come up with your intro and outro music?
I think that's a question for Nadia.
Okay, so the question was about the intro and outro music, which is the same song.
Yeah.
I looked for royalty-free music. So I actually, on my end, before Jamie jumped in with all this technology, I did a lot of research on how to start podcasts and what you can and can't use. You have to use royalty-free music if you don't want to pay for it. There's a lot of great resources on how to get started. And I hate saying just Google it, but it really is. It's just like I Googled, I read a few articles on like the differences between the different kinds of music you can use. And royalty-free music means you don't have to pay for it, but usually you have to attribute it. So if you go on our YouTube channel and you play one of our episodes, you'll see it'll be like hip hop something by blah. So yes, and you had a question.
When you're talking about video creation, are we talking about the auditory part on Canvas or as the visual as well?
Yeah, so when we download the recorded interview, it is video, but we're not playing with the video at all. We're only doing the audio.
But
Okay.
however, as far in Canva, okay, it is a video file because we have that image in the background, because that's what we have to put to YouTube. And because we started it on YouTube, we're keeping it on YouTube. So that's the only part where video gets really brought back into it, is on YouTube.
But what do they see?
What they see is our logo. So let me see if I can find it somewhere.
They don't see.
Geez, there's so much here. Yeah,
We took it out?
no, I think it's here in the beginning. There it is. So they see this. It's just a static image. That's all they see. Connect with adults and the
Yeah, so I just want to make sure we're okay on time. So the skills that we use, so we talk a lot about our tech skills, that was the tools used, right? And I'll talk about the soft skills here. You really need to know how to cultivate a conversation. That sounds really dumb, but you have to be interested in the person you're talking to if you're doing an interview. Like that's standard. If you are not interested, that can be heard, that can be felt, and the interviewee will feel it too. And it's awkward and uncomfortable. We try to make it exactly what it says, conversational. We're having pointed conversations. Project management. So project management skills are really big here. You really need to know how to manage your time. You need to balance multiple moving parts and also be able to change on the fly. So Jamie talked about earlier about our serving neurodivergent students. That episode was supposed to be released a long time ago, but because of all that that kind of pushing a little, the state was like, hold on, let's wait. We had to move our schedule around. We had to find a different episode to release when we did. So you need to be aware that things can happen and things can change. So, and of course, scheduling, making sure everyone is on the same page. The researching too, a little bit what I talked about, like figuring out how to use music, because if you use music that you're not allowed to, that's going to be taken off and that's going to screw up your whole thing, right? As well as your network. You have networking is very important. Actually, I've asked people at conferences, and we're going to get into it a tiny bit. But I am leveraging my network and also building on these conferences to get outside people. Most of our interviews are New Mexico practitioners. But I recently interviewed a person with a much higher job than me from DC, actually on Friday, right before I left for this conference. And we're looking, and part of that was because we connected on LinkedIn and I was talking to her about her job and I was like, hey, I'd love to interview you. And she was into it. Yeah.
And we did talk about that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but do you think we have time? Because it is 2:58.
Let's come back to it if we have time. How about we
Okay,
do that?
thank you.
Yeah.
Is this me?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Oh, wait, this one's mine. I'm
This-
sorry. This one is mine.
and we practiced in everything.
Yeah. Go figure. The only reason I know it's mine is because it's advocacy. So we do have some more goals, to keep evolving and growing our podcast. And one of those is with advocacy. We want to start marketing our podcast to legislators. So for those of you that don't know, our student ambassador cohort is rather large at this point. We've done a whole lot of really great work with our student ambassadors. And because of that, we've been able to cultivate relationships with some very important legislative champions. And so we are known in the legislature now. And I would really love if we could have some legislators on our podcast, especially those who really worked this particular legislative session to champion new bills for us, to champion more money for us. And that, of course, gives them an opportunity to be seen and to be featured in a new area. So I want to not just market the podcast, but have them on the podcast and expand how our students are featured. Because we have a much larger cohort of student ambassadors now, I want to figure out a way for them to design their own podcast episode. What are they gonna do? They will totally be in charge of that. How do they want to run it? We're gonna let them do that. So fingers crossed, we have that kind of a cool new type of episode.
Yeah, that was also an idea. So like, how about we get a little less work we have to do, like have the students do it. Yes, secret. So, and like I was talking about that person I interviewed on Friday, which if you guys start to follow us, you'll find her episode in May, you'll figure out who it is, unless something goes horribly wrong and we can't release that episode and I have to find something else. So highlighting national figures. I also want to dive into research. There is research in adult education that's happening. There are some sessions, as particularly like this conference that I'm really interested in. And we don't always get access to that research unless you are a researcher or a policy person. So it's podcasting can be a way to be democratic in a sense of like you get to learn from people that you wouldn't do yourself or you wouldn't always have that opportunity. And also strategies, because a lot of adult educators have really excellent strategy, whether or not they realize that's what they're doing. But we have a job to do, we have constraints, we have certain resources, some we really don't, and we figured out a way to be scrappy and get to do what we do. And that's so important to share and talk about because then everyone can be scrappy and do what we do and we can do everything better. We also really are working on trying to highlight more literacy programs. We did have an interview, Jamie mentioned earlier, with a literacy program director in New Mexico, and she was just dynamite and super passionate about what she does. And our literacy programs are doing really great stuff. We don't always hear about it. We want to, and we want to share it. As well as ESL. ESL is doing so much great work, and that's something else that we really are looking towards the future. So kind of our next steps, and a little current steps, we're trying to better measure our impact and reach. So we're trying to figure out certain analytics, as well as trying to get more people to comment and subscribe. And like I mentioned earlier, New Mexico is a very community oriented. So what that means is we'll release episodes and no one says anything about it. And then 6 months later, people come up to me at a conference and be like, I downloaded that episode and it was so powerful and it's great. I was like, well, I appreciate you told me at some point. You had to see me to say it, but at least I heard it and that's what's important. But I really want to hear more, and not just for my own ego, but because when we know that something is impacting people, we want to be able to share it. We want to expand on that. We want to give you more impact. We don't just do this for our own edification. And And Jamie mentioned earlier, we have a feedback form on our website. We checked it last week, no one done it yet, but we're really looking for more people that have better ideas and give us ideas. We don't have to come up with everything, you guys got good stuff. We also changed our release schedule, so there was a point where we had so much content, we were releasing twice a month. And then that slowed down, and then we were realizing that we had to, if we wanted to keep that up, we would have to keep doing that. That was too much. It was too much. We have jobs, we have other stuff. We're also no longer splitting episodes. We kind of find it impossibly could be confusing to have a part 1, part 2. And the problem is that it doesn't fully capture the conversation when you listen to only one part of it. We really, expanding our guest pool is something else, like I also mentioned. So one of those things is I really do think of it as trying to like highlight and share and grow together. And I feel like splitting the episodes, you miss that. It's kind of like walking in the middle of a conversation. And or someone's talking to you and you just turn around and walk away, right? So that's a weird kind of analogy, but I really want to fully capture because our guests really put themselves out there. They talk about, themselves and their work. They're very passionate, dedicated people, and they deserve to be spotlighted.
Nope, okay.
And finally, so one of the things that we really wanted to work on is we're working on this that might be a series of episodes, not just one. So Jamie and I had that wonderful conversation where we really talked about how we got into adult ed, what does it mean for us, and what's our vision? And that's something that people really responded to, and we thought like, hey, why don't we ask people to do that? And we've already gotten a couple just from New Mexico alone. We got like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're asking people to record audio or video themselves or send us a story. And Jamie and I will read it and record it. So we also want to hear more from other people. I heard from someone from COABE actually, because we were talking about it. Jamie's on the COABE board. I also was putting it on LinkedIn, and someone that I've only talked to once or twice was like, hey, here's my story. I hope this is okay. I'm like, this is amazing. This is what I asked for. Thank you.
Do you interview people live? Do you want guests on your show as well?
Yes, so this is specifically for like our origin story, so that will be like pre-recorded, but we also do look for new episode ideas. Is your state doing something absolutely incredible and you want to share it? Do you want to work with us? Is your state doing something that people aren't doing or aren't aware of and you want to highlight and you can't afford to go to COABE to talk about it and do a presentation? Please contact us. Yeah, so that's our emails. Please email us and work with us. We will work with you. We will highlight you. We will tell you you're amazing. We'll put you on YouTube and we'll let you shine a little bit. So is there any questions?
Are you uploading your presentation? Is your presentation uploaded on the app?
Yes, our presentation and our handouts are there. So like that little document, I really hope that some people just get a little idea because podcasting, again, it can be really democratic. And there's definitely stuff people can do with their students. We're just talking about what we're doing. That doesn't mean that you have to do exactly what we're doing. Do you want to pull up the headline?
Somebody behind you.
Yes, sorry.
I just from the state agency in South Carolina, adult ed, and wanted to pass along an idea that might get you some feedback from your podcasts. My counterpart in the high school area that does a podcast, and he gives continuing ed credit when people listen. He has a short question form. It's just like a Google form, and they respond to it, and that shows that they've listened, and then they get continuing ed.
Okay, that is absolutely brilliant because I was trying to figure out how to get people professional development hours with podcasting, and just having a form. I was thinking of like an assignment, but that form, excellent. Write that down, Jamie.
I will write that down, thank you very much.
Comprehension check question.
Yeah, just a couple of comprehension check questions that you would have had to have listened to it. We also like we were trying to brainstorm ways that programs can use the podcast as part of like longer form professional development, almost like a book group, but it's a podcast group, so they would listen to certain episodes and then turn that into a professional development opportunity. And just really quickly before we go, because I know we're coming up on time, this is our website, it's nmadulted.org. And if you look at this top menu, it's kind of shortened right now, but there is a podcast page on that menu. And so this is our podcast, Connect with Adult Ed. And if you scroll down, let's see if I can do this without, there we go. You can see, here's the feedback form. So the feedback form allows people to give feedback about current episodes, as well as ideas for new episodes. And then these are our season 2 episodes. So this widget here on the right is from Podbean. And that's really nice because the YouTube blocks were a lot bigger, and so they would have to scroll further. So here, this was our last episode that we released. We have a little description. Here's that intro and outro music attribution that Nadia was talking about. And then you can just hit play and you can listen to it. So all of our episodes, we have season 1, just, you know, on a different page, just links to season 1. But this is where you can find us. Again, if you just search Connect with Adult Ed, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, or iHeart. Any final questions
Or comments?
or comments?
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will keep the Padlet open, so please feel free to look at other people's ideas, other people's responses. What were you gonna say?
No, is it on here? I kind of wanted to see what people.
Oh, the Padlet, yeah. I will pull it up. I know it's already 3:10, so if you're here in person, please feel free to go and get your snacks. It's snack break time. But yes, again, thank you all so much. We'll bring up the Padlet so that we can see that. It's over here on your computer too, so.
That's, well, I want to put it on the screen, but I can't find it. Is there any other comments, Rebecca?
That was just the thing.
Okay. We can, let's go to Zoom, just end it.